Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder of the Institute for Author Growth and Impact, and also the founder of Publish Your Purpose. I am here for day number 8 of our workshop on how to use AI effectively in our creation process, not our writing process, but the creation process of our book. So we are going to talk about a number of different things today. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on how to use AI to basically pressure test our idea before we start writing it. Because what ultimately happens to many, many people, and I've talked about this a little bit in the last couple of days, is we start to write what we think needs to be written. We spend a lot of time and energy and effort in getting it on the page, and then we realize that we were a little bit off. Sometimes we are a lot of it off. Sometimes we are just a little bit where we're just not quite hitting the mark. And so if we can just pressure test our idea before we start the writing process, that can save you time, energy, money, a lot of stress in the editing phase. Book editing in particular tends to be the most stressful part of this process for folks. And so if we can just pressure test what we're doing now, this can avoid a lot of pain down the road. So we talked about on Friday, we talked about how to kind of find different entry points into writing our chapter. So we're talking a little bit more about kind of like the craft, how we don't have to be perfect. We can kind of start where we are. There's a lot of, different things that we kind of discussed. So today, what I want to kind of move us into is thinking more about, I don't know, being courageous sounds a little bit dramatic, but just having a little more courage in this process, because to pressure test, we have to ask ourselves some hard questions, and we have to give AI an opportunity to reflect back on these questions. And so when it comes to pressure testing, if you are still anti-AI after this workshop, that is totally fine. I am not here to convince you to start using AI. I have just found that there's a lot of ways that we can use it as a thought partner, as a thinking tool, as someone to brainstorm with, or something to brainstorm with to help us get further faster. But we're not using it to just say, hey, Claude, write me a book on how to market a book. That is absolutely not what we're doing here in any bit of this workshop. That has not been what our goal is. Our goal is to use it to help us, in this case, pressure test what our idea is. So what we're going to do is we're going to, and I'm going to put up the prompts on the screen. And as they've kind of been getting a little bit longer because we're further in the workshop, I will read kind of what I put and then also share kind of what AI basically spit back out at me. So the prompt that we're going to focus on for today is, here is my book concept. And we're going to describe the book, your reader, kind of your main argument of the book. And then we're going to ask it to play devil's advocate. And we're going to say, what are your 3 strongest objections someone might have to this book? Where's the concept the weakest? And what would make a reader choose this book over others already on this topic? It does require a little bit of bravery, because you might feel really strong about what your book concept is right now, and you ask AI to kind of pull it apart and be devil's advocate. It can be a little bit confronting, because I think sometimes we kind of come into this process feeling like we're really clear on what we're writing, who we're writing it for, what the intended impact is. And then we realize very quickly that, oh, wow, I was really far off. And that's not uncommon. That's kind of like, it's almost like how the book writing process works, where we have an idea, and it's through the writing process itself where the idea gets refined. And in that refinement is when we realize, oh, wow, I was really close to what I wanted to do at the start of this, or wow, I was like really far off. And you don't know that you're far off until you're in it, because you don't really know, because you don't have the content to work with yet. So it's very much part of the creative process. I imagine this extends beyond the writing process. I'm sure there's plenty of other creative endeavors where the same thing applies. So we're asking it to basically poke holes in what our thesis is, if you will, of the book. So we're going to, I'm going to share mine, right? So, and here's what you can do for this part of, here's my book concept. Basically take everything that we have done, because this is day 8, everything that we've done for the 7 days before this, drop it all into AI. It doesn't even have to be formatted, it does not have to be perfect. You could even take a picture of a page in a notebook that you've been writing down on and have it kind of decipher that for you. It doesn't really matter. Like, it really just throw it all in there. Anything that you can think of related to what your book is about. So mine would say, Here's my book concept. My book is for professionals at a personal or career breaking point who struggle with knowing there is something bigger for them, but not knowing how to uncover it. By the end of my book, I want them to clearly identify their purpose and start living it intentionally. And then the rest of the prompt plays out. Play devil's advocate. What are the three strongest objections, et cetera, et cetera. So, my three strongest objections that it believes that my reader would have based on that description is one, I don't have the financial luxury to chase a purpose. Two, I have already read Start with Why. How is this actually going to help me? Three, I'm too tired to add another project to my plate. Those are the three biggest objections. And I think those are really concrete, solid objections that I could absolutely hear someone saying when it comes to purpose. The biggest weakness. So now it's pulling apart the weakness based on what I already told it. So it says the promise needs more teeth. Living intentionally sounds like a self-help platitude to a skeptical reader. The concept does not yet acknowledge the messiness of the middle. What happens when they find their purpose, but their spouse is terrified of them changing? What happens when it does not pay the bills right away? The book needs a promise, the book needs to promise a blueprint for navigating the transition, not just the destination. That's fantastic. Like, that is absolutely fantastic information. And then the last piece is, why would this reader choose this book anyway? And it says you start at the breaking point. Most purpose books start from inspiration. This one starts in survival mode. This builds trust no inspirational book can match. The microdosing approach. You can find and live your purpose in 15-minute increments without quitting your job tomorrow. This eliminates their biggest fear. And the third is purpose as a filter, not a job title. You're not forcing a massive leap. You are teaching them to pivot subtly and strategically. This lowers the stakes enough for an exhausted reader to say yes. Now, as I have been saying from the start of this workshop, I am using this new book idea as an example. I am not fully committed to working on this book right now. This is just, it's giving me kind of food for thought for what a book could look like, because I do believe that I need the first book in a series of 3. So the books behind me, I have Publish Your Purpose and Promote Your Purpose. This would be something that precedes both of those, because both books are making the assumption that someone knows what their purpose is before they're engaging with me. And so this book would be the one that kind of precedes everything of how do we kind of unearth, uncover, figure out what our purpose is. Then we can make the decision of, do I want to publish it? Do I want to promote it? And that kind of gives different pathways. However, with all of that being said, it is not a priority of mine in this moment to work on this book. But the more I see the information coming back from AI, I'm like, wow, I'm like really on, there's really something here. I'm on to something. So that makes me a little more detached, is my whole point in saying this. I'm a little more detached from the outcome simply because it doesn't feel precious. You know, Stephen King talks about, cutting your darlings. I have no darlings yet. I don't have any real skin in the game on this particular book, so I can be detached. You might be 40 pages in, you might be 5,000 words in, you might be well underway, and hearing feedback and criticism, especially from a robot, might feel confronting. So, as with everything I have said this week, we want to take things with a grain of salt. It is AI. There's a lot of problems with AI still. We're using this as a thought partner. We're not just then taking this and saying, okay, now write me a book about it. That doesn't work, because it's not you, it's not your voice. There's a lot of faultiness in that. However, what we can do after this is say, so I'm going to read the original, and then I'm going to read the updated one, so you can actually hear the difference based on the feedback that I was just reading. So the first one is, my book is for professionals at a personal or career breaking point who struggle with knowing there's something bigger for them, but not knowing how to uncover it. By the end of the book, I want them to clearly identify their purpose and start living intentionally. Now, you remember from a couple of minutes ago, all of the criticism that AI spit back out at me. And so now the updated version would be, my book is for exhausted professionals at a career breaking point who know they want more but have zero energy to look for it. Instead of demanding a massive lifestyle overhaul or telling them to quit their job, this book meets readers in survival mode. By the end, they won't just identify their purpose. They will have a high traction blueprint to subtly pivot their daily life in 15-minute increments. navigating the messy transition without risking their financial security. That sounds way better. That already sounds way better. And so when we have that, this isn't quite, I guess it kind of is. It's not quite a purpose statement that we worked on in the first day of this, but it's really kind of our book's premise. It's not the description that we worked on in day 7. It is very much just kind of, this is the core of what I want my reader to get out of reading this book. This is the core anchor point of it. So if we look at what I started with, it wasn't bad necessarily, but based on this now takes into consideration all of those weak points and the points that are positive that would make a reader want to read this book over something else similar to it. So that is the point of using AI, because in the past, what we would have to do, and there's still huge benefit to doing this, is find people around you who will be the ones that will share the honest truth with you. And that is not always, it's not always fun, and you can't always get everybody to do this for you. I happen to be just blunt and blunt to a fault a lot of times, and I have a lot of people who ask my opinion on things because they know I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They know I'm going to tell them the truth. I will be nice about it, but I'm still going to tell them the truth. And so if you don't really have somebody like that in your life, it makes it a little bit different, because you might say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about for my book. And someone will be like, oh my God, that's amazing, because they love you and they adore you and they want what's best for you and they don't want to hurt your feelings. But we need someone to rip the Band-Aid off and say, hey, I love what you're trying to do, but you're just not quite there. And here's where if I were your reader, this is what I would want to do. So we kind of want to find people in our lives that will do that, which can be done through writing groups, which can be done through different kind of online programs. It could be, if maybe you started off as a book club and you all decide that you want to write a book, like who knows what the format or container that might look like. But that's really what we're trying to do, is just trying to find a way to bring in outside influence. And we can have AI be the one that brings in the outside influence. And at the end of the day, this is applicable no matter where you are in the process. You can always veto it, right? You could push back and say, hey, I don't actually think that someone would have this objection. Can we kind of like duke it out? Like really just kind of brainstorm here of, is this a legitimate objection, or is this something that you are hallucinating? And then it might say, oh, you're right, Jen. Like that was not your intention with this. This is actually what an objection would be. So there still is a huge piece of critical thinking skills that need to be overlaid on top of the usage of AI. Like we can't just kind of like use AI, take it as gospel, and then move on. The tools do not work that way at this juncture. So that is today's tip on basically how we can pressure test what we're working on, so that way when we get further down the road, we're going to be in much better shape. So that is all we are doing for today. Tomorrow, or not even tomorrow, I'm not even sure which day, in the next couple of days, Friday, I believe, 9/12 at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, we will be talking about kind of how do we distill down everything that we've been doing over these last 8 days. Day 9 will be on Friday. And how do we basically put this together into one description that is just super easy for someone to understand what your book is about, that gives you motivation to keep continuing and to keep working on this process. Because the one thing that we need a lot of is motivation. Truly, it is a big piece of this process, is finding the right team around you, the right people around you, the right motivation to kind of keep going, especially when the times, there's highs, there's lows, times get tough, they're rough, there's a lot of variables. So how do we make that make sense for us? And a reminder, this has been building up to a workshop. What we've actually done is put a new PDF together that is called AI Your Book. And that document is basically taking all of the content from this entire workshop and putting it in one place with the prompt, with my example prompt, and space for you to figure out what yours looks like. So that way you have the whole kit in front of you. So if you were interested in that, you can check it out at authorgrowthandimpact.org/AI-your-book. Thank you so much, and I will see you